guide for the new patch, as well as talking about SNS as a class in general and where I think it stands. For in terms of SNS as a whole, I think the skill gap for the class got more game sense oriented buffed, but mechanic wise got decreased. This is due to a few bugs that were in the game with SNS getting removed, which basically makes it so that the better SNS had an ability to kind of easily gap other people mechanically wise. And then this next patch, it's going to be more of a gap in terms of game sense, in terms of like when you actually want to shield versus not have your shield up, and there's going to be a lot more difficulties because of that. In general, stamina is a lot harder to come by on the PTR. This is mostly due to Stalwart being removed from the game, which makes it so that you have less stam, as well as a lot of flat stam sources have been removed. And because of this, I have changed my gear accordingly, where now I am running energizing gems in both my sword and my ice gauntlet, or whatever weapon I have as my secondary. I prefer to run the energizing gems in those as well. And the reason why I'm doing that is just so I have a little bit of an extra source of stam. You don't really feel the impact, but you're trying to get all the stam that you can kind of get from this class at this point. That being said, the other decisions I have made for the class and how I'm playing around it are different from that philosophy in the sense that I'm playing to prioritize what I would consider to be the two best perks in the game on the SNS for the next patch, and that would be Defender's Resolve, which is more of a selfish ability in my eyes, and Shield Rush, which I think is the best ability in the game next patch, or at least in that top three conversation, moved up from like that top five that I thought previously. Shield Rush feels very, very fluid now. It's very easy to hit that and combo into other abilities if it sticks. And overall, it just allows you to output more weakens. Those weakens will result in people not dying as much. Your effective HP that you give to your allies is nearly doubled when you land a weaken because those things scale quadratically and they're in different buckets. So overall, it is very, very impactful to say the least, the changes to Shield Rush and Defender's Resolve. Defender's Resolve, the main thing that changed about this is it reduces the attacker's stamina when you're being hit by it by 20%. So these buffs are really, really good. That being said, the constant thing with SNS is there's a battle between SNS and VG. VG, to a degree, can hard counter SNS if played correctly. That being said, there are only a few VGs in the game who I think actually play that correctly, and I'll go over that in the guide for VG later. But overall, these are the two best abilities in SNS by far, and because I think these two abilities outclass everything else, and because the Shield Bash only gives you 15 stam right now with the invigorating ball work and not the actual 60 that it did before with the bug. Because of those changes, I made a change to the tree where now I'm going for reverse stab. Reverse stab allows me to reduce the cooldowns of these two abilities, which I consider to be the best abilities that the SNS has to offer. And then from there, I'm just trying to spam Shield Rush, get the weaken out, Defender's Resolve to make sure my stamina doesn't drop, and it also gives you a near full stam bar just by how long the animation is. And because that ability procs sooner, you are able to kind of get it off more effectively. And that, along with the other changes, just make SNS a little bit more tanky as a class as a whole, but a little bit more less involved in the clump fights, I would say. In terms of tree, the other big notable change I have is I have cut invigorating bulwark. The reason why I ended up cutting this is I realized that I wasn't going to run shield bash anymore because gives me a skill shot, but it doesn't really give you much utility besides that skill shot anymore. So I only have shield rush, and at that point it's a 15 flat stam that I'll be able to cast once a fight, but that being said, I'm usually trying to cast Shield Rush early fight, usually when my stamp isn't broken, so I didn't find it to be worth it. And instead, what I'm attempting to do is I'm attempting to not hold shield as much when people are on top of me, and I try to time the shield when the detonates are about to explode and kind of time it more when the clump fight is actually going off. This also kind of safeguards against the Void Gauntlet counter that I alluded to, where Void Gauntlets, if they drop an Oblivion on you, it strips your aura. When you put your shield down and put it back up again, there's about a 1 second delay of when the buff actually comes back up again. So because you have to drop your shield and put it back up every time there's a Void Gauntlet on you, this can in turn kind of soft counter SNS. There are some like weird ways to combat this. Like if you get staggered, it seems to come up a little bit faster than it did before. But overall, it's in general, SNS is more of a passive role now than it was before, and it's more about timing. So I try to keep my shield down more. I try to be autoing more. I try to be going for those heavy attacks more, which is why I still run Plague Strikes and Trenchant Rend on my sword, and I try to combo that with the actual perk on SNS weaponry called Freeing Justice. So every time I do a heavy attack, it strips the rend, or it adds a rend, it adds a disease, and it removes a buff on me, or debuff on me, and I find that to be like pretty good util as a whole. And because I'm spamming that so much, I have like near full stamina, but it's like a less of a having your aura up all the time aspect. There are times where you definitely can just have your aura up all the time as an SNS when people aren't paying attention to you. This is very, very common in OPR where people don't really understand how to play around in SNS. So you can kind of just exist and then shield people from afar, turn you back to the clump, kind of the standard procedures that you had before with SNS. But overall, that style I don't think works as well in wars, and I like what I expect is people are going to try to counter this whole SNS style where you play more passive, and if people have their shield up all the time, they're going to try to drop oblivions on them, kind of layer them, make that SNS aura not really do anything, as well as actually target the SNS stamina. Because stamina is not very easy to get back now. If you can get the SNS to gray bar, that shield is going to be down for a very long period of time, and that period of time is long enough for a detonate push to wipe people. So it's very, very important as SNS to time when you actually want to shield when the clump fight is really happening and when people are really about to die, and when that's not needed, you need to be putting it down, especially before those respawn timers when detonate pushes are coming out. We haven't actually had a war on the PTR yet. There have been a few practice wars that I honestly have not really paid a ton of attention to because people are slotting a combination of uh, rosters that I don't think are their intention going forward. Like they're kind of just testing the water, seeing how people work together, kind of thing. So you don't really want to judge them hardcore on that on paper. But that being said, there are some things to be taken away from those. But overall, as an SNS, I think it's a more passive style based off OPRs that I've seen, and it's a lot more about timing when you want your shield up versus having it down. Getting into gear, I still run the same perks that I run on live. I run Resil, Elia version, and Invig. I think Stam or the energizing thing where if you get hit when your stam's below a thing a certain amount and then it regens your stam a little faster is definitely viable as SNS and probably is a little bit better. I'm just not used to it, so I haven't been playing with it. I'm gonna wait till I'm actually used to that to full commit to changing it because I don't want to have to change styles between different accounts for that ability. But overall, I think Invig is generally the strongest thing that you can go for next patch. There's also, I think, a valid argument to stack Refreshing Ward. The actual refreshing ward is gonna generate a lot of value, but I think you just have to be kind of wary about stacking refreshing ward because you can kind of get enough out of refreshing ward with only 2 refreshing ward, which is what I'm running right now. So I've run 5 Resil, 5 Elia version, 5 Invig, and that's my standard setup. Invig it just allows you to exist a lot longer. Freedom, while normally would be good on from a point tank perspective, you get staggered so often that freedom almost has diminishing returns weirdly because you get stunned but then you get unstunned every time you get hit, right? And because you're constantly getting stunned and unstunned, it's like why do I even want to run freedom if the entire effect's duration is not going to continue always go off? Like the main part where freedom's really good is if you get stunned by someone, they kind of let you sit there for a long period of time and then do other things to you. But because of the passive freedom on heavy, I feel like that is enough to kind of get by without freedom now, to be honest, and Invig just feels a little bit better to me. Moving on to shield, this is kind of a standard shield that I run on the live. Fortify Shield Rush, Sturdy Fort, Arcane Shield Ward. Arcane I don't have on live, but I'm looking to get. The main reason why I don't run Sturdy here is because there's simply not room for it. The other perks are just significantly better. There's an argument to move Shield Rush, like the Fortify from that onto armor, but then it's a 20%. And the thing about this Fortify Shield Rush is that bonus seems to be multiplicative depending on how many people you hit, and it's very easy to hit multiple people with that ability. So you can have instances where you gain like 66% Fortify, 99% Fortify, and when that stuff happens, like it is literally impossible to die unless the BG strips it off of you, which is why I try to use that Shield Rush more like early to mid fight, I guess, rather than in the late fight situation, as well as that's usually when most of the damage comes through. Sturdy Fort, just you need to have that if you're running a shield. There's not really debate off of that. Arcane Shield Ward is to counter detonates because detonates are very, very common, and that is the best way to do that. Usually I run a 20-10-20-10 split. This maximizes my Fortify because this defensive formation perk, along with your gems, that actual max value is 50%. So by going 20-10-20-10, I max out on two of those values when I have my aura up, and I'm generally safe when the shield is also not up. So that's why I go for that. Moving on to Amulet, I don't run health. I haven't run health for about 3 to 4 months. I believe this is the meta only for SNS. Every other class in a game, health is generally better unless you are in a consistent spot where you're being healed all the time. SNS, because you're getting healed all the time and because you have such a high HP pool already, I think it makes more sense to increase the amount of healing that comes to you rather than increasing your max HP from 19k to like 21k. That's not that big of a delta when you compare those two versus increasing the passive healing that's on you when you're in sacreds all the time. You're getting healed by most of the healers all the time since most of the clump fights happen around you. I find to be a little bit better. On Ring, Refreshing Ward, Enfeebling Hardy, kind of standard stuff there. Enfeebling is to make the actual shield rush last a little bit longer. This only adds like an extra like 2.9 seconds, so some people like to cut that. I think that's significant enough. The other argument I think is you can go something that would be like more slow oriented, but I don't find that to be super consistent, and I don't think it's really worth it in the long run. Moving on to Earring, this is my Teardrop replacement for the PTR, but Teardrop works just fine. Refreshing Ward, Refreshing Toast, Regenerating. Some people have been trying Nimble. I think Nimble is a fair argument and honestly could be better depending if they add Stalwart back in or not. But I don't think it's worth doing. In general, I think Regen is just very, very strong. You combo Regen with Divine, and then you're getting more value off of that. So, and with the SNS passive, that you're also getting additional like divine based stuff on you or like a divine like effect on you, and then usually as an SNS you're playing in sacred, so you just have access to a lot of like healing boosts, and you because you have such a high effective like HP, I think regenerating just in general gets a lot of value on this class. So I find that to be kind of hard to cut for that nimble slot, but I think there is a valid argument for that. On sword, I've kind of changed my biz from having chain to have the reverse stab one on there. That just gets like rid of another debuff on me. It's not for the actual damage itself, it's so that my reverse stab has a little bit more util. It is a little counterintuitive to have that perk from a transferring buff perspective if you have Invig, because Invig's going to reduce the duration, and if I transfer that to an opponent, then it's going to also have that reduced duration, but I'm not really thinking about it from that aspect. I'm just trying to get rid of all the buffs, or all the debuffs on me, because generally as SNS, if you don't have debuffs on you, it's very, very hard to die. So I'm trying to maximize my potential for that, and I find that 2 to 3 refreshing ward is plenty, and generally Invig gets more value the more that you stack it. An IG, this is a temporary IG. I think that Healing Tomb in general feels good, but I would still say Deadly Frost is probably a little bit better overall. The main thing that Deadly Frost has going for it, or I guess the main thing I don't like about Healing Tomb is it works off your base HP, which is like 6k, so you're healing for like 1.8k plus your Divine, right? So it's like a 2k heal, and I don't find that to be as good as having 3% cooldown reduction, as well as the little bit of damage that Deadly Frost does actually increases like ult charge by a fairly significant amount when you dropped it correctly on point. So I find that to be a little bit better overall, but this is a temporary one that I've been running. And then Cutting Bile, I think has been meta for SNS for a while. I think it will be meta for a very long period of time. I don't see the new alt fitting with SNS at all, and I don't think there's another alt that really competes with it. Some people have kind of memed on the PTR and tried Dark Ascent because they gave the iframes to it. The problem is if you're rooted, it doesn't actually move you up into the air. So if it had like that natural like cleanse effect and moved you up into the air, so it didn't matter if you're rooted or not, I could see that being like okay at times. But because it does not, it just seems very, very clunky. You'd have to pop a cleanse pot before you go up in the air, and at that point, like, why are you even popping an ult? It's not doing anything, so I don't find that ult to be really worth it. But Bile is just consistent value. People are around you. You give your team the aura. You give the weaken to the other team so they don't do damage. You put the Bile on them so that they're more likely to die, and that in general gets a lot of value. The other option I think that you could go for is the Stalwart Firestorm, which I have run in the past. I don't run it as much recently, but it allows you to strip the VG rend that's on all allies, increases your effective HP by a lot, adds another weaken, so that's gonna make it so that the enemy really doesn't do damage. This is like an ult that I'll go to if I see my team is getting farmed and we are like literally not living in fights. But if we're living in fights and people aren't dying, that's when I think the bio is a little bit better, so there's like a little bit of a switch there. In terms of like other things are good besides IG, well, I think IG with SNS is like in general the best. I can go over the IG tree real quick, but this is just like a pretty standard tree. I took out some of the damage-oriented perks on here, I guess, that were like more standard. I went for blocking because sometimes you go to IG and then you accidentally block and you don't want to like lose all your stam because of that. And I went for all the utility-based perks rather than prioritizing some of the damage ones that you see on other classes. And then that's the standard IG tree. I think IG is in general the best thing to go with SNS, but there is definitely an argument to go for other weapons. I personally like Greatsword still, like to actually set tempo, because it feels like SNS is a role that if you set tempo on, gets a lot of value, but if you play super passive with, I think is counterable by VG. So I find this to be like a good kind of backup thing to go for at times, and I generally think is pretty good. I also think VG is possible to be running with SNS still. I also uh, think that there are a few other things that are possible, like Warhammer is possible. I think Spear is possible. Spear is probably the most interesting, but I haven't gotten around to actually finishing up a set for that yet. The main reason why Spear is interesting is because the Cyclone has a very low cooldown. It's more likely to hit now, and it gives you flat stam per hit, so then that way you would have more uptime on your shield itself if you had the Spear as a secondary, and that's something I'm probably going to be trying in the near future, but I do not know how good that is overall right now. And you'd probably want Cyclone, like the Leeching Cyclone for that, and I'm not sure if that would actually fit on the Spear itself. And then you put the Weaken on your armor, or if you put the Weaken on the Spear and Cyclone on your armor. It kind of depends on how much damage you're actually doing with Cyclone. I don't think if you're not doing damage with Cyclone, maybe we just go with the Skewer for the Weaken, and we don't really worry about anything else. But overall, SNS is in a very healthy spot. I think it's a bit strong, but because of the changes to fix the stam regen, SNS inherently gets nerfed because of that, and that combined with the buffs makes SNS fairly balanced overall next patch. The aura is very big. It is very easy to shield people now. Instead of having to go into big clump fights, you could often just kind of stand in the middle and let people fight around you, which is nice and feels more like you're giving an aura to people rather than you're having to jump into actual clump fights to give that tiny aura to other people. Overall feels very good. SNS in a good spot, and I would say these builds are very good for carrying in OPR especially, and they are also very good for carrying in war, because you cannot underestimate the value that basically 200% effective HP increase to all your allies within this aura can do to actually carry fights. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Now get top point. Yeah, I'm just going for top. Look at the 50-50 top point. If we win this, we win. Yep, now we go right. We just Zerg it. We just Zerg it. Zerg. Oh my gosh, I want to Zerg. Yeah, we timed it slightly wrong.
Just get your ult in it.
Yeah, that's good.
It's coming out here for the up.
That's a good call. Yeah, I was hoping I didn't realize they had the response that soon. Yeah.
I guess with 5 minutes.
They're all number. Grab that on the rear.
Or I guess we fight it.
He's sending Heat up right now.
Yeah, we're just baiting. Call if they drop behind, we'll just turn. We really don't need to be winning yet. Okay, then we go aggro here.
Yeah,
Go aggro, go aggro, go in, go, go, go.
Regrabbing it, I'm regrabbing from the hole.
Scream on door, scream on door.
Okay, declump, declump.
Got you.
Okay, now we go again. They have no cooldown, we take 50-50.
Scream bottom point. Blue.
We get on the point, start ticking.
I'm going top.
Yeah, top right.
Deado, I grabbed Deado on this grab.
In Oblivion.
50-50 here.
Deco now.
Nice, sick.
Yep, we just focus tick now.
Top right.
Top right, top right.
They're gonna have a respawn here.
Alright.
I would stay declumped as a start, and then when they come in, we can do the second crash, instead of just stacking early like we did last time. Here's the respawn, declump, declump. I'm top point, but I wouldn't trust the shield.
A lot of guys behind us. Don't top.
I almost have Deado up.
In 6 seconds.
Just wait for the healers to die, and then we go.
You're gonna get hit, but you're gonna get hard by 4.
Help our healers for a sec.
Yeah, I'm back to the door for a second. Just play live. They're winning like the round right now. Just wait.
Yep, up top is huge. That's...
Seconds are
Oh, trying to get the healer.
Play live. Play live.
Yep, helping that top.
Rose is getting pushed out right now.
They're gonna crash B top from mid to right.
There is a healer behind you. See one.
Rose, you still got SNS on you? You can get out.
Stick on your pet.
My TP killer, TP killer.
I grab her, friend. I'll grab Deado here. Grab Deado.
Yep, I've got a sacred midpoint.
I'm finding bottom of point.
I think it.
Flashing it.
Stick on your pet.
I'm shooting left for a sec.
No, the ceiling guys about like,
We need to find people in Zerg. Can we nuke this bot? I just slowed him.
Stick on your pet.
their shield is there.
Yeah, we can't do anything. It's a soft reset for sure. We might be able to keep the tick though. Can we just try to keep tick?
I'm just keeping tick.
Watch out.
Yep. There's a sacred bot point B. Don't force this, by the way. Don't look top now.
Point.
Yeah, I'm sharing top.
It's too big. Just declump.
Everyone else is pushing in right now.
Yep. Now we can look for this top. They have no cooldown. They die here.
Stick on your
Top
pet.
left, top left, top left.
Yeah, binding us.
My
Ready, low.
Full rendered. Oblivion on it.
Got you.
You went on points there.
I'm top B right now.
Yeah, they're crashing.
I need sacred top point B if you're alive.
they're burning all their cooldowns right
Yep.
now. They burned all their cooldowns.
Middle point.
Just swing it back in a sec here if we want to.
We have so much support right now. So much.
They're crashing into a beach.
Yeah, I'm bot B again.
Stick on your pet.
Yes.
With our bottom of point.
I'm gonna
Joe's
grab
heading
Deado on the
west
bottom
up.
point around
Yeah, go in.
Grab
Got
Deado.
your pet.
Hold behind them.
Flip.
Stick on your pet. Top point. Stick on top
Push in the
point.
top. Get out.
Yeah.
Something gets up.
Yeah, it's a hard regroup. Alright, I'm getting out of choke.
I'm getting out.
I think I died.
They have 2 SNS in the gate.
I very likely die. I saw that like a second too late. They got the shower behind.
Putting so many people.
Yeah, we're recouping.
Yeah, there's 2 skits outside. Watch out.
No, their healers are tight on the point. I don't know if we like see that, but we have to kill it.
You're right.
Yeah, kill the guy.
Hey, but my plans. We got my plans.
Holy deal.
I was like, well, freedom, never mind.
Wait,
I have
Look at this 20 feet guy in the gate. He's 20 feet.
I
That's
grabbed
a
on
healer.
him. I grabbed him.
Let them get the packets and then we go.
Yeah. Don't go in yet. Don't get greedy.
Get your ults.
I got Dedo. I'm holding Dedo.
We should be clear top of B right now. We're clear. Come on.
They don't have people on top of our gate, so we can go for greedy plays.
We
Yeah,
should go
they-
for greedy right here.
Yeah.
They're looking now. They're looking now on the side, left side.
Yeah, they're probably coming top left.
Out, out, out.
Now, drop it, they're dropping.
Out of be choke.
Well done.
You can harass people for stuck in.
No, you come.
I wouldn't commit though. Alright, helping our bruiser. We're good. Yeah, just help the backline for a second, then we go.
He shot.
Nice, nice.
I have grabbed
He's
Dedo.
pushing it now. He's pushing it now. I have screens. Or
I won't have.
fine. I
Try to
might.
push in if you can. Or side.
Push it in, push it in. I'm on the
Got a bile down.
Dedo in, Dedo in.
I might. Towards mine.
Take our you're right.
I'm getting body blocked.
Going in, getting left side. We have left side control. Maybe just come bottom and this will be enough.
Shock waving, grab it.
We're in.
Bottom half the point, bottom half the point. Kill the
Go
tank
look
up.
it.
Tank super low.
Go look it towards the gate. Towards the chilling turn.
Good.
No one. Our C gate is lost.
Yeah, play left
I'm
side. play left
I'm
side.
static on bottom left of point right now.
Grabbing them.
Be clear.
They're crouching from bottom right.
Yep. We got bottom left shield to bottom mid.
Both sides of getting bodied. Everybody.
Yeah, I'm coming out.
Need to help B.
They dropped our healers. Alright, get it. They came in.
Alright, they're starting to look at B. We need heals on B in a second here. We need heals.
Get it.
Pocket the melee. I think I'm okay.
I'm gonna look bottom of B. They're all mine.
Yep. Shielding it. Tank's marked.
Yo, kill this on middle flag. Middle flag is win.
Oh,
Take our you're back.
Grab the middle point. I'm grabbing on their side.
Keep committing. Bottom left is safe. Bottom left is safe. Bottom point. Healers. Nice.
congrats.
Wait, I got fourth.
That was so disciplined. That was such a good war.
I got 2 deaths.
Yeah, it was a really good war.
God damn.
Holy shit.